Julie Gunlock, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.
Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely, it's good to see you again. All right, so you've been very busy, by the way. I don't know how you find the time to do all of this stuff, but you've been very busy writing. You have pieces at National Review. You had a piece in the Boston Herald over the weekend. And again, the topic du jour. This is, by the way, National School Lunch Week. Did you know that, Julie?
Yum! Yes, yes. Do your kids a favor. Pack them a lunch.
Look, that's what the headlines are saying. The number of kids eating their school lunches going down.
Yep.
So let's start with your Boston Herald piece. As you were saying, you say the feds forget kids' picky food habits. So all of these rules that have been designed by the brightest minds in Washington and beyond have forgotten, you say, the fact that they're dealing not with little data points,
Right.
but they're dealing with kids
Right.
who have their own thoughts and their own desires and their own eating habits, and they've sort of left all of the real world stuff out.
Kids are incredibly frustrating to get to eat the things they need to eat. And the feds are creating these dietary guidelines, which, are sort of like a fairy tale. I mean, they're sort of like fantasy dietary guidelines that assume that children will eat anything you put in front of them. And for instance, they are suggesting that we all accept plant-based diets. The Dietary Guidelines Committee itself advises vegetarians, if you're going to do this, you have to eat a wide variety. So in order to get the nutrients and vitamins and required protein, you need to eat a very wide variety of vegetables. And vegetarians are very good about this. They eat a whole bunch of different things. The problem is that children don't. I mean, this is not just, parents who are sort of bad parents who don't expose their children to a variety of foods. Kids are well known. I mean, there have been studies on children and their eating habits. This isn't just the fault of parents. Kids actually like sweeter foods. They don't have a very good sort of a sense of what tastes good. They don't like bitter flavors. And again, this comes with maturity. Your palate expands as you get older. And so to suggest to parents, we should all change to a plant-based diet is really kind of silly, again, because children just generally don't eat a wide variety of foods. So again, I think the Dietary Guidelines Committee that is redoing the dietary guidelines, they're going to be issued next year, is really on a bad path. And unfortunately, these dietary guidelines, they determine how school lunches are designed. They determine how our military eats. They determine how certain federal benefits are allocated. And so I think, in my piece in the Boston Herald, I'm just cautioning people, I'm cautioning the committee that they should really take a step back and consider what parents deal with, and that is picky eaters. So these guidelines are going to be ignored by parents who have to deal with the reality of feeding kids.
Do you think it's a fait accompli that these dietary guidelines are going to come out and they're going to recommend that kids in school, that the school lunches switch to a plant-based diet?
I do, and we're starting to see this. You're starting to see pressure on schools. They're doing meatless Mondays, and there's definitely a political message going out to kids now that meat is somehow cruel. So I think we'll start to see, schools taking the meat out, putting more things like black beans, and look, I think it's great to integrate more vegetables, but again, I think they need to deal with the reality that kids are picky eaters, and many kids really need the protein sources from lean meats. We can still allow kids to eat lean meats that are perfectly healthy, perfectly fine, and frankly, give them sort of a boost of the nutrients they need instead of having to eat 15 different vegetables to equal what the nutrients that come in one piece of lean beef or one piece of chicken.
All right. Now, your piece at National Review, a little bit broader. You're writing about schools as the new social welfare centers. What do you mean by this, Julie?
Well, National Review did a symposium. They asked me to contribute a piece to the symposium on why schools are failing. And look, there's a lot of reasons that we read about why schools are failing, if it's Common Core, if it's teachers union defending bad teachers, all sorts of reasons that our schools today are failing American kids. But the piece that I wrote is I tried to highlight the fact that schools are now required to do so much more than teach kids. diets. You've heard me on this show talk a lot about 3 meals a day. Schools are providing breakfast, lunch, and dinner. There's after-school programs and before-school programs. So there's essentially babysitting services that are conducted out of the school on school grounds. Sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're off the school grounds, but they're still coordinated by the school. School buses take the kids to these facilities. Whether we're talking about sort of the environmental lessons that are given to kids about recycling, you've got condom handouts at schools. There's school health centers where they'll provide girls with medical information and young men with medical information. I mean, schools have become this sort of hub of, everything a parent was doing is now being done in the school. And so I think we need to examine the expansion of the responsibilities, that lie within the schools. Parents just aren't required to do as much anymore. And that's why we're seeing, these schools fail, is because, again, their responsibilities go far beyond just simple educating kids.
And you wonder if you get to a point, Julie, where, as you say, parents aren't required to do as much anymore. I hate to invoke the slippery slope argument, but it doesn't seem a big stretch to say that parents aren't then allowed to do as much anymore.
Well, I've written a lot about this with the school lunch program. Look, it's a disincentive. Why would you get up early and make your kid a lunch if you know the school will do it for you, and if you are actually being encouraged to do it? It's not just a matter of, okay, it's there. I've talked about pamphlets coming home from my own son's school where they say, hey, morning is a busy time. Drop your kids off at school. We'll feed them breakfast. I mean, what kind of message is that? I mean, parents ultimately should be the ones feeding their children breakfast. Now, look, I understand if someone has a job, they have to be to the job at 6 a.m. They bring their kid barely awake to the school, for before care, and then the child gets breakfast there. I understand there are these kinds of circumstances, but I certainly don't think it's the school's job to discourage parents for convenience sake, and that's exactly what we're seeing now. So again, I think we're offering parents a great disincentive to actually do the things that are pretty basic to a parent's responsibilities and a basic role.
Talking with Julie Gunlock from the Independent Women's Forum. All right, one more question for you, Julie. Where'd you get the snazzy new glasses?
I bought them.
I
bought them.
Give you a softball question.
I am getting very old. I can't see anymore. So I finally had to go and get the glasses. Now that the kids are all in school, I can do things like that. I also went to the dentist. It's kind of fun doing these things that you sort of, haven't done in a while because you've had these little kids around. But now that they're all in school, I can actually do these things. So anyway, I can see much clearer now.
Imagine how much more you could do if you dropped them off in time for them to eat breakfast.
I might be able to work out, something like that. No.
Julie Gunlock, thank you so much for coming on the program. It's great seeing you today.
Thanks for having me on.